Hey, welcome to the Aftermath, our continuation series of our weekly live stream, The Storm, where we take a look at a lot of the survival crafting games that we have completed on The Storm and tell you everything you need to know from the Storm's top survival crafting experts. This week we're diving into The Forest by Night Games. The Forest is a first-person survival horror experience in which a father and son, while traveling on an airplane, experience misfortune and find themselves stranded on an unknown island. Luckily for the player, the main character seems to be a survival crafting expert in real life, having written many books before the incident occurs. After a pretty rough crash landing, the main character wakes up to find his son being abducted from him. You wake up hours later in a very realistic crash site with just a few materials and an empty stomach awaiting you. Armed only with an emergency axe from the wreckage of the plane, and knowing we're not the only ones here, you need to set up a base pretty quickly before problems start occurring. Crafting is performed through your survival book that gives you an array of items you can build. While the game doesn't give direct instructions for following the storyline, the player can find clues around the island to help him progress through the story. Soon enough, the player discovers he's not alone on the island, as some human-type cannibals exist that seem to be equally as curious as they are threatening. Typically during daylight hours, they will try and avoid you, but once nighttime falls, they'll come back in groups. Other evidence around the island indicates that you might not be the first person to find this place. And there's some strange things occurring. Your suspicions of people being there before you are quickly confirmed by some pretty grotesque situations in which you can find other survivors that weren't so lucky. Arguably, the biggest horror element of the game is entering these caves, which the player must do to find better equipment and more information about the story. Typically having only this lighter to illuminate your surroundings. Using the dim light and traversing these dark caves makes for quite a terrifying experience. And the game holds nothing back with fear ambience. Crafting is also done by piecing things together here. On the mat, basic things like combining alcohol with rags can make Molotov cocktails. Additionally, combining things that might already exist to help you out with other lighting sources or a variety of things can be useful. A little extra lighting never hurt anybody. Many things dwell in the caves. Not all of them human. Getting captured in a cave is no pretty sight, and you can find yourself in a very similar situation as those before you. The game isn't all teeming with horror and anxiety and isolation fears. The forest is actually quite abundant in natural life. That's quite beautiful to see. Night Games does do a very good job about making a unique rolling environment that really helps with immersion for the game. Tribes typically will have a camp in which they stay at, which are usually dangerous to low-level players. But while dangerous, they make for good scavenging areas with supplies that can't be found elsewhere on the island. After a fair amount of cave exploration, you'll come across large stashes of items in the backs of these caves that really makes the horror and anxiety all worth the journey, including things such as brand new weapons. Again, don't just take this game for a psycho horror anxiety inducing game. The forest is full of breathtaking scenery and a very unique map. The crafting is quite therapeutic, making it a favorite amongst those who prefer to have really epic and grand bases. The crafting mechanics in the forest make this game a paradise for those who love to build. You can design bases as simple or as interesting as you would like, including traps and weapons to help fight off the enemies. Hope you guys enjoyed that little summary of the game. This brings us to the ratings portion of the Aftermath. Our first category is going to be survival. For the survival category, food and water are not hypercritical things to pay attention to. They're not going to consume all your time like other games do. However, they're still equally important as they are in most games. The ability to create traps and other means of keeping wildlife more on hand, drying out food for long periods of times, all makes the survival experience pretty well thought out, leading us to a game rating of 6.0. Crafting is one of the elements that the forest really thrives in, whether it's the mat style item crafting or the blueprint style base crafting. Those who love to build will find lots of enjoyment within the forest. Leading us to our overall rating of the crafting category as a 7.0. Difficulty is always a tough category to assess, as some players might struggle more than others. Us, however, with tons of survival crafting experience under our belts, rank the game at a 6.0. Graphics-wise, the game is as beautiful as it is scary, giving it an easy rating of 7.2. Realism is a difficult category to assess. When we say realism, we don't say it in terms of non-human enemies or fantastic situations. Instead, what we mean is if we were dropped in this exact same scenario, how realistic of a response does the game let you have? And while the environment is very real feeling, the enemies instill terror, and the overall storyline presents genuine emotion, we have to knock a few points off due to the extensive crafting, which is a nice aspect of the game. However, if we were actually, you or I, dropped on an island infested with cannibals, I don't think we could muster much more of a shelter beyond a simple grass hut, not so much even these giant grandioso bases that you can certainly make within the forest. That being said, we still give the rating for realism a respectable 6.0. For duration, we have to give the forest a 5.8, as the current speedrun record for the game is around 6 minutes 24 seconds, but for the most common casual gamer, having never played the game before, it'll take you around 16 to 24 hours to complete the game and feel like you've witnessed all the content that it has to offer. However, there is an alternate ending, and that adds for some extra time if you want to play it through or reset before the final decisions that play a factor in that alternative ending. But nonetheless, we give the duration a 5.8. For the multiplayer category, setup is rather easy to get other players involved in the game. People can join in and be right on par with you, as there is no leveling system. As with most games, it is equally more fun to play with other people than it is by yourself. However, the game is equally enjoyable single as it is in multiplayer fashion, thus leading us to a rating of 7.2. As for the fun category, as we've said multiple times, the immersion is fantastic, multiplayer is nice, and the general balance between fear, anxiety, stress, happiness, loot rewards, all of the above, as well as a compelling story, make for a nice fun rating of 7.4. The cost category is a rating of the game on 1 to 10 of how likely we would be to pay full retail price to experience the game had we never experienced it before. That being said, the storyline and the overall feel of the game are good enough to give it a 7.0. However, with the announcement of the sequel to The Forest, The Sons of the Forest, set to be released sometime this year, we believe there should be sales coming out for it that would probably be better just waiting until then. For the overall rating, we took 5 different players' ratings of the previous 9 categories and averaged them out to reach a combined rating of 6.8333. Considering that End Night Games is an indie, small development team, I think they've done fantastic work, and excited to see what the sequel, Sons of the Forest, has to offer. Thank you so much for joining us on our first episode of The Aftermath. If you're a fan of all things survival crafting, please consider dropping us a follow. Our next game to be reviewing will be Raft. And if you'd like to discuss anything about The Aftermath, the ratings we gave Forest, or just to get to know us, you're always welcome to join The Storm, live on Twitch every Monday through Thursday at 9 o'clock Central Standard Time. Or you can join our Discord. Links to both will be in the description down below. I'm CleansingRain, and we'll see you next time.